Hello, in this tutorial I will show you a retouching technique that will allow you to create this kind of dramatic look on your image. This technique works best on images where you have a lot of skin texture, like you can see here, and maybe this effect is a bit too extreme for this photo, but you can adjust the amount of effect that you want. And let me just show you the original image. So we will go from this to this. As I said, this is a bit extreme, but you can adjust the amount of effect, and basically we will use some adjustment layers and the dodge and burn tools. Hey guys, this is Andrei from psdbox. Welcome to another Photoshop tutorial. As I was saying, I will show you how to make this kind of retouching effect on your photos. You can open this image from the stock folder that you downloaded along with this video. I rescaled the image a bit because I'm also recording the video, but you can use the full resolution image if you want to. And the first thing you need to do after you open the image is create a duplicate of the background layer. And you can do that if you press Ctrl or Command J. Or you can also right click and choose duplicate layer, and you can name this layer Monochrome if you want, and you can go to Image Adjustments, Hue Saturation, or press Ctrl U and desaturate the image completely and click OK. And the next thing you need to do is change the blend mode from normal to multiply, and you will see that the image gets darker. But what we want here is later we will change the color cast of this image using a gradient map and the color balance. So what you need to do now is, in between these two layers, add a hue saturation adjustment and reduce the saturation to about -44 or something like that. This depends on your image, but for this one, -40 or something like that works best. And now for this monochrome layer, reduce the opacity to about 35 or 40%. Let's leave it on 40. And the next thing I need to do is add levels, because I want to add a bit more contrast. And I found that for this particular image I only had to touch the shadows. You can see this gap here, so just drag this to about 12, and that way you increase the shadows a bit and you add more contrast. You can leave this ones untouched, but if you want a bit more contrast on the midtones, you can play with the sliders as well, so just it's up to you. And next I added a gradient map because I wanted to change the colors of the image, and you can see that we have a lot of highlights here. The background is completely white, so I'll leave the highlights to white. I will not touch those. I only want to change the shadows and the midtones, so this part here. So once this adjustment window opens, you can click on the gradient to open the gradient editor and select the shadows, which is this part here on the left. Click on the color and you can choose, I chose a purple color like this, and the color is up to you really, and click OK and change the blend mode to soft light. And you can see it's too red, so I'll have to choose something a bit more towards the blue color, something like that. You can even try cyan if you want to, but I don't really want that look, so a blue color like that. Click OK and change the opacity to about 35 or 40. Let's leave it on 40, and I think I will change the color, because once you change the opacity, the look changes. So I might go to this kind of blue. Also notice that if you go to black, you lose color, so keep it somewhere here in the middle. I like this one. Click OK and click OK. And now for another color twist, I added a color balance. I like to add the color balance because it allows me to adjust the color balance for each separate channel. I used this following values. For the shadows is -3, 0 and 2. For the midtones, -1, -2 and 8. And for the highlights, I left it all on 0. You can also try the preserve luminosity. I like to check it in this case because it adds a bit more contrast, so check preserve luminosity. And you can see the change. We added a bit more purple there, so you can change the gradient map if you don't like how it looks. Maybe go a bit more towards cyan. Okay, something like that, a bit darker, and click OK. So once you have this adjustment layers, it's just a matter of adjusting them and get the contrast that you want. Maybe you want to play with the levels a bit, just increase a bit the highlights and the contrast here, or change the colors on the gradient map. So it's really up to your taste. And remember that you can also play with the monochrome opacity, so you can add more or less opacity. The higher the opacity, the darker the image, but try not to really make it too dark, so I think I'll leave it to 35. And next it's the dodging and burning part. You can also use the mixer brush tool to smoothen the skin, but for this one I think I will leave it like that. You can use the spot healing brush tool and just remove all these spots here on the skin, but I think I'll leave it like that. And let's go to the dodging and burning part. Create a new layer above all the other layers and name it dodge burn or something like that. Once you have this layer ready, press Shift and Backspace to open the fill window. You can also go to Edit Fill, and from this contents section here, choose 50% gray and click OK. Leave this at 100%. And from the layers palette, change the blend mode to soft light or overlay, and get the let's start with the dodge tool. First select the brush tool because I want to show you something. Usually I work with the dodge and burn tool to dodge and burn the highlights and the shadows, and if I want to fix an area, I select the brush tool, choose the foreground color, and make sure I have this set to 50%. So 50% gray. I have this at exactly 50% gray, and click OK. And that way, if I make a mistake with the dodge or the burn tool, let's say I make a mistake, something like that, and I get rid of that shadow. If I want to fix that, I get the brush tool, make sure I have the hardness and the size that I want, and choose the opacity and fill it to 100%, and just paint with that, and that way I get rid of I paint back to 50%, which is the original color of this layer. So that's how I work. Other people use the brush tool and just paint with black and white instead of using the dodge and burn tool, but I like to work with the dodge and burn tool and fix the areas that where I make some mistakes using the brush tool and painting back with the 50% gray, which is almost like erasing stuff. As I said, I start with the dodge tool. I usually use an exposure of about 10% on the midtones, but you can use whatever value you're comfortable with. Usually working with low opacities, well, with low exposures in this case, it's better because you can build up the effect. So I'm using the dodge tool, painting on this layer set on soft light, and I'm just dodging the highlights to make them brighter. I will not spend as much time as I did on the original because I just want to show you the technique. I have more dodging and burning tutorials, but the technique is the same. I use the dodge tool to dodge the highlights and the burn tool to enhance the shadows and the midtones a bit. I'll probably increase the exposure because, as I said, I'm not going to spend as much time and I want a stronger effect on the first pass. Really spend more details on the spend a bit more time on the details, sorry, and you'll get better results. Usually I start like now with the highlights and then move on with the shadows. It's also really useful if you can use the keyboard shortcuts to increase and decrease the brush size, and make sure you use hardness 0, because otherwise you will end up with hard edges. And just go over all the areas where you see highlights. Right now I'm doing it really quick, but I spent like a half an hour doing this, going to details even like here on the ears, decreasing the brush size and going over all these highlights here. If you want to temporarily switch to the burn tool while you have the dodge tool selected, you can press and hold the Alt or Option key. If you take a look at the history here, you will see that I'm burning. So even though I have the dodge tool selected, if I press and hold the Alt or Option key, I burn. So that's a quick access to the burn tool if you want to fix an area. Now let's continue with the dodge tool. As I said, I'm just going to go fast here. I'm not going to spend too much time, but you should spend more time dodging and burning than making those adjustments, because those are really in just a few minutes you can add a few layers, a few adjustment layers, but the important part really is the dodging and burning. There you can really enhance the highlights and shadows. Just go over all the areas, but remember to use a lower exposure value that I'm using, about 10%. Just make several passes. And you'll see the difference in just a second. Okay, let's go to the burn tool now, and I'll use the same options: range set to midtones and exposure to about 10%. For some reason the burn tool looks like it has a stronger effect, so you might have to use an even lower exposure value. But again, that's depends on your way of working. If you have a tablet and if you have it set to pen pressure, you can use a higher exposure and just control the amount of effect with the pressure. But as you can see, I have this disabled. I have the transfer disabled because I don't want to mess with the pressure on the pen. I'm more comfortable working with the setting that I have set here. So with the burn tool, just go over the shadows, and just like with the other tool, if you press and hold the Alt or Option key, you will temporarily switch to the dodge tool if you want to. So let's say I want to enhance this highlight here. I press and hold the Alt key and I can dodge that, and you can see that here on the history. And if I let go, I go back to the burn tool. And for areas like the fingers here, just to make the brush smaller. Don't forget about the woman's hair, so you can dot these highlights here and enhance them. Let's keep going with the burn tool. I don't like this area here, I burned it too much, so in order to fix that, it's not good to switch to the dodge tool and go over it, because you will make it even worse. That's why I use the brush tool, set at 50% gray, and just paint over that. You can play with the opacity if you want less effect, so you can erase that part, actually paint over it, and then go back to the burn tool and just burn that area again. So just enhance the body shapes a bit, and you're good to go. And I'll show you the before and after, so without the dodge and burn and with the dodge and burn. It's a quite significant change, and if you want a stronger effect, you can duplicate that layer and you'll get an even stronger effect. Some people also apply Gaussian blur to it, and let's try that. Just to soften the effect a bit. You can see that. And for the final touch, you can use a Vibrance adjustment or hue saturation, depending on what Photoshop version you have. You can increase a bit the saturation or desaturate it even more if you want to. And if you think it's too purple, you can go back to the gradient map and maybe reduce the opacity of it, or maybe increase it, or maybe increase the opacity on the monochrome layer. So this is the effect I wanted to show you. Again, this is the original image and the effect. You can group all the layers if you want to. Select all the layers, press Ctrl G to make a group, and reduce the opacity of the group if you want to show more of the original image. And you can also create a stamp if you want, pressing Shift, Ctrl, Alt, and E, or Shift, Command, Option, and E on Mac, and go to Filter, Artistic, and choose Paint Daubs, or use the Unsharp Mask filter, and you can add a bit more sharpness to the image so that it looks a bit better. So well, that's the effect that I wanted to show you. I hope you liked this tutorial. This is Andre from psdbox. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.